I was 28 when I married Daniel. He was 36, charming, and made me feel like the most special woman in the world. Ours was a love story people admired, at least in the beginning. We met at a mutual friend's wedding, and from the first conversation, it felt like fate had brought us together. He was successful, well-spoken, and had a way of making everyone around him feel at ease. For the first few years, our marriage was perfect. Romantic dates, weekend getaways, and late-night talks where we dreamed about our future together. But slowly, something started shifting. The warmth between us faded, replaced by an unsettling distance. Conversations turned into small talk. He seemed distracted, his once attentive nature replaced by indifference. I told myself it was just a phase. Every marriage has ups and downs, right? Then came Sophie. She was my close friend from college, someone I trusted completely. She was warm, outgoing, and always the life of the party. She had been a part of my life long before Daniel came into the picture, and when the three of us spent time together, I felt grateful to have such good people around me. I never imagined she could be a threat. First, I noticed small things. Daniel laughed more around her, his usual serious demeanor shifting into something playful. If I ever mentioned it, he brushed it off. "You're imagining things," he would say, smiling. "She's your friend. Why would I ever think of her that way?" His words reassured me, but deep down, a voice whispered that something was off. I ignored it. I wanted to believe that the man I married would never betray me. But as weeks passed, my instincts kept nudging me. Late nights at work turned into entire weekends of unexplained absences. If I questioned him, he had a perfectly logical excuse. I wanted to trust him. He needed to. One evening I came home earlier than expected. As I stepped inside, I heard laughter from the living room. It was Sophie's voice, mixed with Daniel's. I walked in and saw them sitting too close. He was massaging her shoulders, his hands lingering a little too long. They both turned to look at me, their expressions frozen for a split second before Sophie laughed. "Oh hey, I had a terrible headache and Daniel was just helping out. Nothing serious." Daniel smiled casually, as if nothing was wrong. She looked tense. Just being a good friend. I forced a smile, but inside my stomach churned. It was such a small moment, yet it confirmed my worst fears. They were too comfortable, too familiar. Something I had been blind to was now right in front of me. But I stayed silent. I told myself I was overreacting. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying that moment. Was I being paranoid? Or was I finally seeing what had been there all along? The next morning I decided to push my doubts away. I had no real proof. Accusing Daniel without evidence would only push him further away. But deep down I knew this wasn't over. That night doubt consumed me. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every interaction between Daniel and Sophie. The way he laughed at her jokes, the stolen glances, the ease between them that once belonged to us. My heart pounded with suspicion, but I forced myself to breathe. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Maybe I was just insecure. The next few days I observed them closely. Every time Sophie visited, Daniel seemed more attentive to her than he was to me. He asked about her day, poured her drinks, and even played music he knew she liked. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but I saw it. The shift. The undeniable chemistry. Then came the moment that shattered everything. One evening, Daniel told me he had to work late. It wasn't unusual, so I didn't question it. But hours later, when I checked my phone, I saw Sophie's Instagram story. She was at a cozy restaurant across town. Asterisk asterisk, and Daniel was in the background. Asterisk asterisk. My body went cold. My hands trembled as I clicked on the image, zooming in. It wasn't just dinner. The way he leaned in, the way she smiled at him. It was intimate. A setting meant for two people who didn't have to hide. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, a mix of rage and heartbreak. I wanted to drive there, confront them, demand answers. But instead I took a deep breath. I needed to be smart. I needed proof. The next morning I did something I never thought I'd do. I went through Daniel's phone while he was in the shower. My hands shook as I scrolled through his messages. And then I saw them. Texts between him and Sophie. Daniel *, can't wait to see you tonight. Sophie *, me too. Last night was amazing. Daniel *, wish we had more time alone. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just a harmless friendship. This was betrayal. Cold and undeniable. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Every memory of our marriage, every moment I had trusted him, suddenly felt like a lie. My best friend and my husband. The two people I trusted most. How could they do this to me? I put his phone back and walked to the kitchen, my mind racing. Confronting them now would be easy, but I wanted the full truth. I needed to know how far this had gone. That evening I pretended nothing had changed. I smiled, made dinner, acted as if I didn't know. But inside I was burning. Daniel kissed me goodnight, whispered, "I love you," and I almost laughed at the irony. The next day I set my plan in motion. I told Sophie I needed to talk. I invited her over, pretending to be oblivious. When she arrived I kept my voice light. "You've been spending a lot of time with Daniel lately," I said, watching her reaction. She hesitated, then smiled. "Oh, we're just good friends. He's been helping me with some things." Lie. Straight to my face. I leaned in. "Are you sure there's nothing more?" Her smile faltered for just a second. A flicker of guilt flashed in her eyes before she quickly masked it. "Of course not. You're my best friend. I'd never do anything to hurt you." I almost admired her confidence. Almost. But I had already seen the truth in black and white. That night I confronted Daniel. I laid his phone on the table, open to the messages. His face drained of color. For a moment he said nothing. Then finally he sighed. "It's not what you think," he said weakly. I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Not what I think. So you didn't lie to me. You didn't sneak around with my best friend." He rubbed his face, exhaling slowly. "I never meant for it to happen." Pathetic excuse. An empty justification. "Do you love her?" My voice was barely a whisper. He hesitated. And in that pause I got my answer. I felt my heart shatter, but I refused to let him see my pain. I stood up, my decision clear. This marriage, this betrayal, I wouldn't let it destroy me. They had broken my trust, but they wouldn't break me. And just when I thought I had uncovered the worst, Daniel spoke again. "I'm not the only one who kept secrets," he said, his voice low. "You've betrayed me too." My heart pounded as I stared at him. His words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. I felt anger rising inside me. How dare he try to turn this on me? He was the one sneaking around with my best friend. He was the one lying to my face. But something in his expression made me pause. He wasn't just trying to shift the blame, he meant it. I swallowed hard. "What are you talking about?" Daniel let out a bitter laugh. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't seen the way you've been acting? Always on your phone, always distant. Do you really believe you're innocent in all this?" I shook my head, confused. "I never cheated on you, Daniel." He leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. "Maybe not physically, but emotionally. You checked out of this marriage long before I did." The words stung. Not because they were completely false, but because deep down I had felt the same. The distance between us wasn't just his fault. I had felt it growing, and instead of fighting for us, I had retreated. I had let resentment build, pushing him further away. I looked away, my mind racing. Had I really betrayed him in my own way? Had I given up on our love long before Sophie came into the picture? The truth was painful. Maybe we had both been searching for something we had lost in each other. Daniel sighed. "I'm not making excuses. What I did was wrong. I know that. But don't act like you didn't play a part in this." We stopped talking. We stopped caring. And instead of fixing it, we both just let go. I clenched my fists. "So that makes it okay to cheat?" "No," he said softly. "It doesn't. Silence stretched between us. The weight of our choices settled in the room like a storm waiting to break. My anger was still there, but so was something else, an uncomfortable truth. I thought back to the nights I had spent lost in my own world, scrolling through social media instead of talking to him. The times I avoided intimacy, using exhaustion as an excuse. The moments I could have fought for us but chose to stay silent instead. It didn't excuse what he did. It didn't justify his betrayal. But it made me see that our marriage had been crumbling long before Sophie entered the picture. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Do you even love me anymore?" I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came. Because I didn't know the answer. I had spent so long feeling hurt, betrayed, and distant that I hadn't even stopped to ask myself if there was anything left to fight for. For the first time in a long time I realized the truth. Love wasn't just about passion or grand gestures. It was about showing up even when things were hard. It was about fighting for each other when everything felt like it was falling apart. And neither of us had done that. Tears welled in my eyes, but I blinked them away. "I don't know, Daniel." My voice was barely a whisper. He nodded slowly. "That's what I was afraid of." The painful reality settled between us. We had spent so much time blaming each other that we never stopped to see our own mistakes. Maybe love had still been there once, hidden beneath the hurt and betrayal. But now, it was too late. A deep sadness filled my chest. Not just for what he had done, but for everything we had lost along the way. The laughter, the connection, the dreams we had built together. They had all faded, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but regret. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "So, what now?" Daniel looked down, his expression unreadable. "I don't know. But maybe, for both of us, it's time to stop pretending." I nodded, the truth finally settling in. We had both betrayed each other in different ways. And no matter how much we wanted to fix things, some wounds ran too deep. For the first time in a long time I felt clarity. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about accepting that sometimes, love isn't enough. The silence between us stretched longer than ever before. There were no more accusations, no more anger. Just the truth, raw and undeniable. We had both played a part in the downfall of our marriage. Love had been there once, but neglect, resentment, and betrayal had eroded it beyond repair. I stood up, feeling strangely calm despite the storm raging inside me. "I think we both know what comes next," I said quietly. Daniel exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Yeah," he admitted. "We do." For years, I had imagined our marriage lasting forever. I had pictured growing old together, overcoming every challenge side by side. But love alone wasn't enough. Without trust, respect, and effort, even the strongest love could crumble. And ours had. I packed a small bag that night, not because I wanted to run away, but because I needed space to think clearly. As I stepped out of the house, I realized something. I wasn't just leaving Daniel. I was letting go of the past, the pain, the illusions of what I thought we were. The next few weeks were difficult. There were tears, sleepless nights, and moments when I questioned everything. But as time passed, I started to see things more clearly. I learned that betrayal doesn't just happen in a single moment. It builds over time, in neglect, in unspoken words, in emotional distance. Daniel and I had failed each other long before his affair with Sophie. We had let our marriage drift, choosing comfort over communication, silence over honesty. His betrayal was the final blow, but the cracks had been forming long before. One afternoon I sat by the window, watching the world move on as if nothing had happened. And that's when it hit me, life does move on. Pain fades, wounds heal, and even the deepest heartbreak becomes a lesson. I met with Daniel one last time. We sat across from each other, no anger left between us. "I don't hate you," I said, surprising even myself. "But we can't go back." He nodded, his eyes heavy with regret. "I know. We signed the divorce papers not as enemies, but as two people who had once loved each other and lost their way. And for the first time in a long time I felt at peace. Betrayal is painful, but it also teaches us. It forces us to confront the truth we often ignore. I learned that love alone isn't enough to sustain a relationship. It takes effort, honesty, and commitment from both people. Without that, even the strongest bond will break. To anyone listening, let this be a lesson. ***, never take love for granted. Never stop communicating. Never assume that love will survive without care. And above all, never let betrayal define you. ***, pain is temporary, but the lessons it leaves behind can shape you forever. And sometimes, letting go is the most powerful act of love you can give yourself.